My name is Elaine Mercer. I was 57 when my brother took my master keys off the wall in front of 41 tenants, 2 buyers, a broker, and half our family, then hung an orange vest over my arm and said I could help with the gate. He did it beside the office window of Mercer SafeLock Storage, the yard I had opened every morning for 23 years. The vest had black letters across the back. Temporary gate attendant. Ronald smiled as if he had solved a staffing problem. Keys don't make you important, Elaine, he said. They only mean someone trusted you to open the gate. The buyers looked at their shoes. The tenants looked at me. My nephew Aaron stopped stacking paper plates by the barbecue table, and my brother tapped the sale folder against his palm like the money inside it was already his. The price was $1.3 million. Ronald would pay off his failed boat dealership. His wife Marcy would get to tell everyone they had finally simplified the family assets. The buyer would get a storage yard that looked clean from the road. The wire was aimed at Ronald. The complaint letters, the tenant claims, and the boundary fight waiting behind row C had already been addressed to me. All he needed was my signature on a clean yard statement before the title company released funds Thursday at 4:10. All he gave me was a vest. On the counter behind him, half covered by a roll of raffle tickets, was the old unit map my father had drawn by hand in 1998. Ronald called it clutter. Marcy called it Elaine's little coloring project. By Thursday afternoon, that map would be lying under a glass paperweight in a title company conference room while the closing officer stopped a $1.3 million wire with one sentence. But that morning, under the white tent Ronald had rented to celebrate the sale, my brother still thought the only thing between him and the money was a woman trained to keep gates open. Mercer SafeLock Storage sat behind the feed store on County Road 6, with 2 rows of blue metal units, 1 gravel lane, 1 office trailer, 1 keypad gate that jammed whenever frost got into the hinge, and a faded sign my father had painted the year my mother stopped coming to the yard. SAFELOCK, storage. Monthly units. No cash left overnight. He had added the last line after a customer named Mr. Haskell tried to pay 3 months of rent with a coffee can full of quarters. My father, Walter Mercer, built that yard because he hated throwing things away and understood that most people were carrying more life than their houses could hold. Christmas decorations, dead husbands, tools, divorce furniture, college boxes, business inventory, mothers, dishes nobody was ready to donate. He said storage was never about stuff. It was about giving people time to decide who they were after something changed. I believed him. I was 34 when I left my job at a bank and came home to help him after his first stroke. Ronald was supposed to handle the business side. He lasted 11 days. On day 12, he said the gravel dust was giving him headaches and returned to selling boats he could not afford to own. So I stayed. I learned which customers paid late but always paid. I learned which locks rusted in February. I learned that Unit 18 belonged to a widow who still called it Tom's room. I learned that if a tenant arrived after dark with swollen eyes and a child asleep in the passenger seat, you did not ask questions. You opened the gate, printed the agreement, and kept your voice gentle. My father kept the old unit map taped to a board behind the counter, not because we did not have a computer. We did. It froze twice a month and made a sound like a blender full of pennies, but it worked. The map was for what the computer could not hold. A red circle meant a unit had a roof leak history. A yellow square meant do not auction without calling twice. A blue line marked the strip of land behind row C that looked like ours from the road, but was not ours. That blue line mattered. My father drew it with a carpenter's pencil and rewrote the note every January. Harlan Strip. Leased access only. Do not sell. Do not pledge. Do not promise. He taught me the sentence when I was still young enough to think adults read what they signed. Don't guess where a line ends, he said, tapping the map with his knuckle. Someone's life is usually sitting on the other side. The Harlan Strip was a narrow piece of land behind Units C1 through C14. Old Mrs. Harlan owned it. My father leased it from her for $1 a year and plowed her driveway in return. After she died, her grandson renewed the side lease with me every January because he lived in Arizona and did not want 14 storage units leaning over his family boundary while lawyers wrote letters. The arrangement was simple if you knew it existed. Ronald did not know it existed because Ronald never had to open the gate at 6:30 on an icy Monday while a tenant waited with a moving truck. He knew the sign. He knew the tax bill. He knew the sale price. He knew that our father's will had put the land into Mercer Storage Holdings, with Ronald as majority member, because he was the son who had business instincts, a phrase my father used in his last year when he was tired and Ronald had started bringing him soup. The same will named me site operator until I resigned in writing or died. Ronald remembered the first part. He misplaced the second. For 6 years after Dad died, Ronald let me run the yard while he called himself owner at Rotary breakfasts. I did the invoices, the snow calls, the lock lists, the late notices, the police reports when someone dumped old mattresses by the gate. Ronald came by when the grass needed to be in the background of a photograph. That was our arrangement. He got the title at the table. I got the phone at midnight. Then his boat dealership failed. The first sign was Marcy asking for copies of everything in February. She came into the office wearing white jeans in slush weather and held her purse against her ribs like the trailer might stain it. "We're just reviewing family assets," she said. I asked who we meant. She smiled at the map behind me. People who understand growth. 2 weeks later, Ronald asked if I could freshen up the office before spring. Freshen up meant remove the old map, take down the photo of Dad standing by the first gate post, replace my hand-labeled key hooks with a digital cabinet, and stop letting tenants come in for coffee. "This place looks like a garage sale with a keypad," Ronald said. "It is a storage yard," I said. "Exactly," he answered, as though I had made his point. In March, a man from Turnpike Storage Group came by in a black SUV. His shoes were too clean for gravel. He walked the rows with Ronald while Marcy filmed short clips on her phone. I was in the office sorting March checks when I heard Ronald say, "Elaine handles small things. Locks, late rent, neighbor chatter. I handle ownership." The man asked about row C. Ronald waved a hand. "All included." My pen stopped above Mrs. DeLuca's receipt. I looked through the office window at the blue units behind him and the Harlan strip running like a hidden sentence just beyond the back wall. I opened the door. "Row C access has a side lease," I said. Ronald turned slowly, the way men turn when they think a woman has spoken from the wrong part of the room. "We'll discuss details later." "That is a detail." The buyer looked at Ronald. Ronald laughed through his nose and put one hand on the man's shoulder. "My sister has been here so long she thinks every note on a wall is law." The man smiled politely. I went back inside and made a copy of the side lease, not because I was preparing for war, because my father had raised me not to watch people step over blue lines without marking the date. By April, the sale had shape. Turnpike Storage Group would buy Mercer Safe Lock Storage for $1.3 million. Closing would happen at Green and Vale Title, 40 minutes away in Ashford. Ronald would settle the line of credit he had quietly taken against his membership interest. Marcy would finally get the kitchen renovation she had been describing as delayed by Elaine's sentimental grip on the property. Nobody asked me if I wanted to sell. They did not need my permission to sell the company's land. They did need my signature on the Clean Yard Statement. The Clean Yard Statement said all units, boundaries, tenant notices, and access rights had been reviewed by the site operator and were ready for transfer without active dispute. That document would attach my name to everything Ronald had failed to check. I first saw the draft because Aaron sent me a photograph of it. Aaron was Ronald's youngest son, 26, the only person in that family who still returned shopping carts. He had worked summers at the yard in high school, mostly sweeping units and helping tenants lift sofas. He was not brave in a loud way. He was decent in a way that made him uncomfortable at family gatherings. The photograph arrived on a Tuesday night. A yellow kitchen table, Marcy's manicured thumb holding down page 2, a line near the bottom highlighted in pink. Site operator acknowledges all premises, including rear access strips and CROW improvements, are owned free and clear by Mercer Storage Holdings and may be transferred without restriction. Under it, Aaron had typed, "Aunt Elaine, is this true?" I stared at the words until the kettle behind me clicked off. Rear access strips, free and clear, transferred without restriction. 3 phrases neat enough to pass through a closing if no one looked behind them. I texted Aaron back. "No." Then I added, "Do not argue with your father. Send me anything else you see." He replied with a thumbs up, and then, 30 seconds later, a second message. "He told Grandma you were going to be made ceremonial at the barbecue." Ceremonial. That was Ronald's favorite kind of woman. Visible enough to decorate the story, powerless enough not to change the ending. The barbecue was supposed to be a tenant appreciation event. Ronald printed flyers and taped them to every unit door. Mercer, SAFELOCK, Spring Thank You Day, hot dogs, raffle, big family announcement. I found the first flyer on Unit 9, fluttering under a strip of packing tape. Mrs. DeLuca stood beside me with a laundry basket on her hip. She was 72 and had been renting C8 since her husband died. "Are we being sold?" she asked. I did not lie. "There is a sale pending." Pending means not done. That is correct. She looked over my shoulder at the back row. "My Joe's tools are in there." "I know. You still have that map?" "Yes." She nodded once. "Then I'll sleep tonight." That sentence did more to steady me than any lawyer could have done. The morning of the barbecue, Ronald arrived at 8:15 with balloons, a rented tent, a Bluetooth speaker, and a box of orange vests from a supply store. He had never arrived before 10 in his life. Marcy came behind him carrying a tray of cupcakes with fondant padlocks on top. The padlocks had little silver icing keys. They were terrible and expensive looking. I had already opened the gate, swept the office, put fresh paper in the printer, checked the keypad, and fixed the jam on Unit B12 with a screwdriver. Dad had wrapped in green tape so no one would steal it. Ronald watched me lock the tool drawer. "You won't need that after next week." "I still need it today." He made a small sound. "You always did get attached to things that were not yours." At 10:30, tenants began arriving. Some came for hot dogs. Some came because storage tenants can smell a change of ownership faster than bankers can. They stood in little groups by the gravel lane, paper plates in hand, looking at Ronald's balloons and then at me. The buyers arrived at 11:05. Turnpike Storage Group sent 2 men, Daniel Reese, Regional Acquisitions Director, and a younger man named Parker who carried a tablet and kept photographing gutters. Their broker, Laura Winch, arrived in a navy suit and white sneakers, which was the correct footwear for pretending not to care about gravel. At 11:20, Ronald clapped his hands near the tent. "Everyone gather up! Gather up! We have some exciting news." The speaker behind him was still playing old Motown too loudly. Aaron walked over and turned it down. Ronald did not thank him. My mother sat in a folding chair near the cupcakes. She was 82, sharp in the ways that wounded and vague in the ways that protected Ronald. She had always believed sons made decisions, and daughters made things comfortable afterward. Ronald lifted a plastic cup of lemonade. "As most of you know, Mercer SafeLock has been in this family for many years. Dad started it. We maintained it. And now we are taking it into a new chapter. We." That word walked across the gravel and put its foot on my throat. He continued. "Turnpike Storage Group will be purchasing the yard this week. They have the resources to modernize this property in ways Elaine and her little office system never could." A few tenants shifted. Mrs. DeLuca's mouth tightened. Ronald held out his hand toward me. "Come here, Elaine." I should have refused. Instead, I walked forward because sometimes obedience is so old in your bones it moves before your judgment does. Ronald put his arm around my shoulders. He smelled like smoked meat and drugstore cologne. "My sister has helped this yard in her own way." Helped. My hand closed around the edge of my paper cup. She knows the gate codes, the personalities, the little notes, all of that. And we appreciate her service. Then he reached behind him, took an orange vest from Marcy, and draped it across my forearm. The black letters faced outward. Temporary gate attendant. The first sound was a cough from the back row. Not illness, embarrassment. The kind people make when they are trying to give a room permission to recover. No one recovered. Ronald pointed through the office window at the keyboard. And since Turnpike needs a clean transition, we are simplifying roles today. He walked into the office, pulled my label from the master key hook, and stuck a new paper label in its place. Ronald Mercer, authorized family representative. The paper curled at one corner because he had used cheap tape. He took the master ring and held it up. Elaine, sign the clean yard statement after lunch. Smile for the buyer photo and stop guarding that trailer like a museum. I looked past his shoulder. The old unit map was still on the backboard. Blue line, red circles, yellow squares. Dad's handwriting, slanted left. Ronald followed my eyes and shook his head. That thing goes in the trash Monday. Mrs. DeLuca said, No, it doesn't. Ronald smiled at her like she was a child interrupting a wedding toast. Turnpike has software, Mrs. D. We're not running the county fair anymore. Daniel Reese, the buyer, looked from Ronald to me. Is there a concern about the map? Ronald answered before I could. There is a concern about my sister adjusting to retirement. The barbecue smoke drifted across the gravel. A balloon snapped loose from the tent and dragged its ribbon across Unit A3. Aaron stared at the master keys in his father's hand. My mother looked at the cupcakes. I took the orange vest off my arm, folded it once, and set it on the table beside the raffle tickets. I will read the statement before I sign anything. Ronald's smile thinned. You have read enough things in your life. The sentence landed exactly where he aimed it. At the part of me that had spent 23 years reading late notices, lease renewals, boundary notes, insurance letters, and weather reports, so he could call ownership a talent. I did not answer him in front of the tenants. I picked up the roll of raffle tickets and moved it off the old map. That was all. Pause here with me for a moment. This channel is for people who have been treated like the person who only opens the gate while someone else sells the whole place. If you know that feeling, tell me where you are listening from. And tell me this. Have you ever protected something people mocked until they needed it? After the barbecue, Ronald told everyone I was tired. He used the word tired the way families use it when they mean inconvenient. By 2 p.m., the tenants had left with paper plates and rumors. The buyers had gone to lunch with Ronald and Marcy. My mother had been driven home by Aaron, who hugged me before he left and whispered, He has the statement in the blue folder. I spent the next hour alone in the office. The place smelled like ketchup packets, sun-warmed metal, and the lemon cleaner I used on the counter because Dad had liked it. I took the old unit map down carefully. The tape on the top edge resisted. It had been there so long it came away in little dry pieces, clinging to the board like skin. Behind it were lighter rectangles where the sun had not reached. I laid the map flat on the counter. Dad had drawn the yard with a ruler and carpenter's patience. Row A, row B, row C, office, gate, gravel lane, drainage ditch, Harlan strip. On the bottom right in blue pencil was his note. Side lease renewed annually. Copy in drawer 2. Elaine to confirm each January. I opened drawer 2. There it was. A folder with 23 annual renewals, each clipped by year. Dad's first 6. Mine after that. The most recent renewal was dated January 3rd. Signed by me and by Cody Harlan, grandson of the original owner. It granted Mercer SafeLock access use only. It did not allow sale, pledge, transfer, construction, or representation of ownership. I copied it. Then I copied the map. Then I copied Aaron's photograph of the draft statement. I put the originals back. At 3:18, Ronald returned, smelling like steakhouse lunch. He came in without knocking. He had never knocked on a door he believed belonged to him. "Where's the map?" "In the drawer." "It belongs on the wall until Monday?" "It belongs in the file." He leaned both hands on the counter. "You are making this painful because you need to feel central. The statement is false." He laughed once, without humor. "That statement was prepared by professionals. Professionals can only write from what you tell them." His face changed. That was the first time I saw fear under the performance. Only a corner of it, but it was there. "What exactly are you trying to say?" "Row C sits partly behind the Harlan access line. You cannot transfer that strip as free and clear." He looked toward the back window as though the land might rearrange itself out of loyalty. "That old lady died. Her property did not. The buyer is purchasing the company. The company does not own what the company does not own." His hand struck the counter, not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough to remind me he wanted the room to belong to his volume. "You are not a lawyer." "No. I am the person who renews the lease every January because you forget land has edges." Ronald stared at me for a long second. Then he picked up the blue folder from under his arm and slid a document across the counter. "Sign this." I read the first page. The language was polished. Too polished for Ronald. It thanked the site operator for years of support. It confirmed transition readiness. It certified no active boundary, tenant, access, lien, notice, or ownership disputes existed. It said I had reviewed all physical premises and records. My signature line was already printed. Elaine Mercer, site operator. So I was gate help in front of tenants. Site operator when liability needed a chair. I tapped the line with one finger. Interesting promotion. Ronald's jaw tightened. "It is a technical requirement." "No, it is a net." Marcy appeared in the doorway behind him. She had changed shoes. "Elaine, nobody is trying to trap you. This is exactly why Ronald said you would become emotional." I looked at her. "You put my title back when you needed my signature." Her eyes moved to the paper, then away. Ronald lowered his voice. "Sign it, or I will tell everyone you killed this sale because you could not stand not being in charge." "Tell them." He blinked. "The problem with people who rely on shame is that they expect it to remain loaded. Mine had been misfiring for years. I folded the statement once, lengthwise, and gave it back. I will not sign a false statement." Ronald leaned close enough that I could see barbecue sauce dried at the corner of his mouth. "Then I will sign as family representative." "There is a place for that on the packet?" "There will be by Thursday." He took the paper and left. Marcy stayed one beat longer. "You know," she said, "your father left Ronald control because he understood who could handle growth. My father left me the map." She made a small face. "That is exactly what I mean." On Monday morning, the key cabinet arrived. 2 men installed it while I was processing April rent. Ronald stood behind them with a coffee he had not paid for and watched my old hook board come off the wall. The board had labels in my handwriting. Master. Gate override. Row A row. B row Century office. Snowlocks. Harlan. The younger installer asked, "You want us to toss this?" Ronald said yes. I said no at the same time. The installer looked between us. I took the board from his hands. Ronald rolled his eyes. "Fine. Keep your souvenir." I carried it to my car and placed it carefully across the back seat. Not because I needed another piece of old wood, because the Harlan key hung on that board with a blue tag. A blue tag Ronald had never noticed. The Harlan strip had a separate gate latch for emergencies. If Turnpike believed it owned that access outright, it would cut that latch by Friday. If it cut that latch, Cody Harlan could file a claim, tenants in row C could lose access, and the clean yard statement would become more than careless. It would become evidence. By noon Monday, Ronald had changed the gate code. By 12:07, 3 tenants called me because their old codes failed. By 12:21, Mrs. Valuka stood outside the office door holding a receipt book from 2011 and wearing the expression of a woman prepared to be difficult until death. "My code doesn't work." "I know." Did you change it? No. Then who did? Ronald stepped out from behind me. Turnpike requested a transition code. Mrs. DeLuca looked at him. My husband's lathe is in C8. It remains secure. My gate code does not. Ronald smiled. Mrs. D, Elaine will help you with access while we modernize. She turned to me. Are you still the person I pay? I answered carefully. Until closing, payments still come through this office. Ronald's smile vanished. That is not what we are telling people. It is what their lease says. He moved closer. You are poisoning tenants against me. No, you changed the gate before giving them codes. That is standard transition. For software, maybe, not for widows with lathes in C8. Mrs. DeLuca put her receipt book on the counter. I want a copy of my lease. Ronald's eyes flashed. Why? Because Elaine reads things. I'm thinking I should start. By Tuesday, the sale was no longer a private family matter. It had become gravel lot weather. Tenants called each other. Someone posted in the town Facebook group asking whether Mercer SafeLock was auctioning units after the sale. Someone else replied that Ronald had told them nothing changes, which in a small town usually means something already has. At 4:30 Tuesday, Aaron sent another photograph. This one showed a revised seller statement. Ronald had signed it. Ronald Mercer, authorized family representative. The false sentence remained. All premises, including rear access strips and C-row improvements, are owned free and clear by Mercer Storage Holdings and may be transferred without restriction. Under the photograph, Aaron wrote, Dad said your signature was no longer necessary because you declined transition cooperation. Then, I'm sorry. I sat in the office trailer, with the fan clicking overhead, and stared at the phrase declined transition cooperation. Families have a gift for making theft sound like manners. I printed the photograph. I added it to a folder of my own, not cream card stock, not a dramatic folder, just a brown expanding file from the supply cabinet with a bent elastic strap. Inside it went the old unit map copy, the January Harlan side lease, the 22 prior renewals, Mrs. DeLuca's lease for C8, photographs of the keyboard before removal, the tenant calls logged after the code change, Aaron's photographs, the revised seller statement, the title company contact sheet Ronald had accidentally left in the copier tray. That last item mattered. Green and Veil title. Closing officer, Samuel Ortiz. Wire batch, Thursday, 4:10 p.m. funding documents due by 2:30 p.m. I knew title companies from my bank years. They do not enjoy surprises. They enjoy documents aligned in a row, names matching, signatures behaving, land staying where surveys placed it. At 5:12 Tuesday, I called Green and Veil title. A receptionist answered. I asked for Samuel Ortiz. He is in closing preparation. Tell him Elaine Mercer is calling about Mercer SafeLock storage, rear access strip, and a seller boundary statement. She paused. That pause told me the file was open on someone's desk. One moment. Samuel Ortiz came on the line with the calm voice of a man paid to prevent panic from entering real estate. This is Mr. Ortiz. My name is Elaine Mercer. I am the named site operator for Mercer SafeLock Storage. I believe your closing packet contains a false boundary certification. There was no gasp, no outrage. Professional people do not gasp when money misbehaves. They reach for pens. What specifically is false? The packet says rear access strips and C-row improvements are owned free and clear by Mercer Storage Holdings. The rear strip is leased from the Harlan family for access only. It cannot be transferred. Do you have documentation? Yes. Send it. I did. At 6:04, Samuel Ortiz replied with one sentence. Received. Do not alter original records. That sentence felt less like comfort and more like a door locking. Wednesday morning, Ronald arrived before me. My office chair was outside. Not just moved. Outside. It sat beside the dumpster with dew on the seat, one wheel sunk into gravel. Inside, a new black chair sat behind the desk. Marcy was in it. She had arranged a laptop, a candle, and a little acrylic sign that said Transition Office. My father's photograph was gone from the wall. In its place was a framed print of a highway at sunset. I stood in the doorway holding my coffee. Marcy looked up. "Oh?" "Ronald thought it would be better if I organized the closing materials from here. You put my chair by the dumpster." It was old. So was the company. She looked tired, suddenly. Not guilty. Tired of pretending this was tasteful. "Elaine, you could have made this easier." "For whom?" "For everyone. There is a special cruelty in that word when spoken by someone sitting in your chair." Ronald came in behind me. "Good. You're here. I need you to call the tenants who are making noise and reassure them." "With what authority?" He pointed at the orange vest hanging on the coat hook. "With that one?" I walked to the hook, took the vest down, folded it, and placed it on Marcy's transition laptop. "Then gate help should not be making legal statements to tenants." Ronald's face went red along the jaw. "You are enjoying this." "No, you always wanted me to fail. I wanted you to read the map." He stepped closer. "Maps don't stop sales." I looked at him. "Thursday will answer that." At 9:45, Samuel Ortiz emailed again. "Ms. Mercer, please bring original records to Green and Vale Title tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. This matter must be addressed before funding review." I printed the email. Ronald saw the Green and Vale header from across the room. "What is that?" "A closing question." He held out his hand. I folded the paper and placed it in my purse. "No," Marcy stood up. "Elaine, if you interfere with this sale, Ronald can sue you." "For refusing to sign a false statement?" "For damages." Ronald seized on the word. "Yes, damages. You cost this family $1.3 million. You will answer for it." Mrs. DeLuca's voice came from the open doorway. "Interesting. The family now includes me?" None of us had heard her walk up. She held a yellow envelope and a paper bag from the bakery. "I brought Elaine a lemon roll." Ronald looked furious at the lemon roll. "This is a private meeting." Mrs. DeLuca stepped inside. "My lease is in that row you sold on paper. I'm private enough." She placed the yellow envelope on my counter. "Copy of my rent receipts. Joe kept everything." He was annoying in useful ways. Ronald turned toward me. "You see what you're doing? You have tenants challenging ownership now." "No," Mrs. DeLuca said. "Your ownership challenged my lock first." Marcy packed her laptop. The candle remained, unlit, smelling like artificial cedar. By Wednesday night, the office had become a place Ronald avoided. He texted instead. 8:14 p.m. "You are confused about your role." 8:19 p.m. "Dad put me in charge." 8:23 p.m. "You were never meant to control this asset forever." 8:40 p.m. "If you come to closing tomorrow, behave." I did not answer any of those. At 9:02, Aaron texted, "He is telling Grandma you are having an episode." At 9:03, I replied, "Do not defend me. Just keep your own copy of what you sent." At 9:05, he wrote, "I'm coming tomorrow." I stared at that message for longer than necessary. Then I typed, "Only if you can stand what may happen." He answered, "I've been standing next to it my whole life." Thursday morning arrived hot and windy, the kind of spring day that throws dust into every corner. I reached the yard at 7:10. My old chair was still outside by the dumpster. I picked it up, wiped dew and gravel grit from the seat with paper towels, and carried it back inside. The black transition chair went into the corner. I put my chair behind the desk, not as a speech, as furniture. Then I took the original map from drawer 2. The paper had softened at the folds. Dad's blue line was still clear. His handwriting leaned left. At the bottom edge, there was a coffee ring from 2007 and a small grease mark from the winter we fixed the gate motor with a borrowed wrench and half a sandwich. I placed the map in a flat cardboard mailer. I added the original Harlan renewals, Mrs. DeLuca's lease copy, the keyboard photograph, and the printed seller statement. At 10:30, Ronald arrived wearing a gray suit. It was too tight across the shoulders. Marcy wore navy. My mother came with them, in pearls, because Ronald liked witnesses who would not understand what they were witnessing. "You are not riding with us," Ronald said. "I did not ask. We are presenting a united family. You moved my chair outside yesterday." My mother sighed. "Elaine, must you catalog every little injury?" I looked at her. That is how records work. She frowned, not at the meaning, but at the inconvenience of hearing it. At 12:50, I locked the office. Mrs. DeLuca stood by C8. She lifted one hand, I lifted mine back. I drove to Green and Vale Title alone, with the map flat on the passenger seat under my purse so the wind from the vents would not lift the corners. The title company was in a brick building beside a dentist's office and a place that sold hearing aids. The lobby had beige chairs, a fake ficus tree, and a coffee machine that made everything taste faintly of cardboard. Ronald, Marcy, my mother, Daniel Reese, Parker with the tablet, broker Laura Winch, Aaron, and a notary were already there. Ronald looked at Aaron. "What are you doing here?" Aaron's voice was quiet. "I worked at the yard." "You swept floors." "I also know where row C is." Ronald turned away from him. Samuel Ortiz opened the conference room door at 1:31. He was about 60, compact, with silver hair, brown glasses, and the exact expression of a man who had already read enough to dislike everyone equally. "Mercer SafeLock closing review," he said. "Please come in." The conference room table was long, polished, and too bright under the ceiling lights. Folders sat in front of each chair. A glass paperweight rested near Samuel's end of the table. Behind him, a digital wall clock showed 1:34. Wire batch, 4:10. Ronald sat at the head of the table before anyone told him to. Samuel looked at the seating chart in his folder. "Mr. Mercer, you are there." He pointed to the side. Ronald's smile flickered. Daniel Reese sat across from him. Marcy sat beside Ronald. My mother sat near the wall, clutching her purse. Aaron sat at the far end, hands folded. I sat where Samuel indicated, 2 chairs from the title officer. Ronald leaned back. "Let's get this resolved. We have already delayed enough over a misunderstanding." Samuel opened the file. "This is not yet classified as a misunderstanding." Marcy made a small sound. Ronald laughed softly. "My sister has always been protective of little routines. The map, the keys, the handwritten notes. She is having difficulty with transition." There it was. The final public lowering. Not loud, not crude, more dangerous than that. He had dressed it in concern. Daniel Reese watched me. Samuel did not. He turned a page. "Mr. Mercer, did you sign the revised seller statement dated Tuesday?" "Yes." "Did you submit it as authorized family representative?" "Yes." "Did you certify that all premises, including rear access strips and C-row improvements, are owned free and clear by Mercer Storage Holdings and may be transferred without restriction?" Ronald lifted his chin. "Yes, that is correct." Samuel looked at me. "Ms. Mercer, you dispute that certification." "I do." Ronald spread his hands. "Because of a hand-drawn map from the Clinton administration." Samuel took off his glasses, cleaned them with a cloth, and put them back on. Hand-drawn documents can be irrelevant. They can also point to recorded documents people failed to disclose. He slid the old unit map from a folder and placed it under the glass paperweight. The blue line ran across the table like a river no one had bothered to bridge. My father's handwriting sat in the bottom corner. Harlan strip. Leased access only. Do not sell. Do not pledge. Do not promise. For a moment, the only sound was the wall clock, moving from 1:47 to 1:48. Not silence. Mechanics. Time doing its job. Samuel placed the January Harlan lease beside the map. Ms. Mercer provided the original annual access renewal for the Harlan Strip. We also obtained county parcel confirmation this morning. The rear access strip is not owned by Mercer Storage Holdings. It is subject to a limited access arrangement renewed annually by Ms. Mercer as site operator. Ronald sat forward. That strip is incidental. Daniel Reese turned sharply. Incidental to 14 units? Samuel continued. The seller's statement says it is owned free and clear and transferable. That is false. Marcy whispered. Ronald. He ignored her. The company has used that strip for decades. Use is not ownership, Samuel said. Ronald's face flushed. My father handled it informally. Samuel tapped the lease. Your father documented it. Your sister renewed it. The sale packet omitted it. Laura Winch, the broker, closed her eyes for 2 seconds. Daniel Reese pushed his folder away. Are the C-row units marketable without that strip? Samuel answered carefully. Not as represented in this packet. Parker stopped photographing nothing and finally looked up from his tablet. Ronald pointed at me. She brought this at the last minute to sabotage the sale. Samuel turned one page. Ms. Mercer contacted this office Tuesday evening, within hours of receiving the revised seller statement. She was not included in the earlier packet as a signer, despite being named site operator in the operating documents. Ronald's mouth opened. Samuel did not let him fill the room. The paperwork frames Ms. Mercer as unnecessary for authority, but necessary for certification. That inconsistency is part of the problem. My mother said she has always made things difficult when Ronald tries to lead. Samuel looked at her with professional patience. Mrs. Mercer, family interpretation is outside this review. That was the kindest dismissal I had ever heard. Then Samuel lifted Ronald's signed statement. This document also certifies no tenant access disputes. I gave him Mrs. DeLuca's lease and receipts. He placed them on the table. Unit C8 is current through October. Gate code changes were made Monday before tenant notices were issued. We have call logs from multiple tenants reporting blocked access. Daniel Reese stared at Ronald. You told us all tenant codes had been transitioned with notice, Ronald said. They were going to be. That is not what you wrote. The notary's pen rested halfway across her pad. She had not written a word in 6 minutes. Samuel stacked the papers in a precise line. Here is the direct version. The sale packet includes land rights the seller does not own, access rights the seller cannot transfer as represented, and tenant status statements contradicted by leases and call logs. The wire will not be released in today's batch. Marcy closed her eyes. Ronald said, You cannot stop my sale over a map. Samuel looked down at the old map, then back at him. The map did not stop it. Your certification did. That sentence did not belong to me. It belonged to the file. Daniel Reese stood. Turnpike is suspending closing, pending amended title review and revised valuation. Ronald stood too. You're walking away from a signed deal? Daniel looked at him. We signed based on your representations. Laura Winch gathered her folder with the careful movements of a woman calculating commission loss. Samuel added, Green and Vale will issue a written hold notice by 3 p.m. The seller statement will remain in the file. Any amended packet must disclose the Harlan access arrangement, current C-row tenant status, and the operator authority discrepancy. Operator authority discrepancy. That was what my brother had made when he called me gate help in public and site operator on paper. Ronald turned on me. You are proud of yourself? I looked at the old map under the glass. Dad's blue line. Dad's warning. Dad's stubborn belief that lines mattered because people mattered. Then I looked at Ronald. You sold past the blue line. That was all I gave him. It was enough. The hold notice went out at 2:56 p.m. The wire batch closed at 4:10 without Mercer safe lock. By Friday morning, Turnpike Storage Group had requested a $310,000 price reduction, escrow holdback for tenant claims, and removal of Ronald's exclusive signing authority until the operating documents were clarified. By Monday, the line of credit Ronald planned to pay off with sale proceeds had gone into default notice. By Wednesday, Marcy's kitchen renovation contractor stopped work because the deposit check bounced. By the following week, Green and Vail Title sent a correction memo to all parties. It stated that Elaine Mercer remained the named site operator under company documents and that any future transfer packet involving premises access, tenant status, or site representations required her written acknowledgement or formal resignation. Ronald called it betrayal. The title company called it correction. Those are not the same language. For 2 weeks, Ronald tried to save the sale. He called Cody Harlan in Arizona and offered to clean up an old handshake. Cody called me afterward. "Your brother offered me $500 to sign away permanent access. What did you say?" I said the annual lease is now $5,000 if renewed at all. I laughed for the first time in days. Not because it was funny, because my father had once plowed Mrs. Harlan's driveway for free for 11 winters, and Ronald had managed to convert that goodwill into a market rate problem in one phone call. Cody did renew with me, not with Ronald. The new lease had 3 changes, $5,000 per year, 30-day notice before any ownership transfer, and a clause stating no party could represent the Harlan Strip as owned by Mercer Storage Holdings. Cody said his lawyer added that after I mailed him the old map copy. "Good map," he said. "Yes," I answered. It raised me. The sale eventually collapsed. Turnpike did not want a yard with disputed access, angry tenants, a family operating fight, and a seller who treated maps as decorative. Daniel Reese sent one formal withdrawal letter, polite enough to sting. Ronald blamed me at Rotary. He blamed me at my mother's kitchen table. He blamed me in a 4-paragraph email to the family with words like obstruction, bitterness, instability, and sabotage. Aaron forwarded it to me with no comment. I replied with one sentence, "Keep your own copies." That became our small family branch motto. By June, Ronald's attorney sent a letter demanding I resign as site operator. My attorney, a woman named Patrice Bell, with cropped gray hair and a habit of circling weak verbs, replied with the operating agreement, the title correction memo, and photographs of my chair outside the dumpster. Her letter was only 2 pages. Its effect lasted longer. Ronald could remove me only by company vote and documented cause. Since Ronald had submitted a false seller statement while I had preserved the file, cause had become a difficult word for him. By July, the lender on Ronald's boat dealership filed suit. By August, Marcy stopped coming to town events. By September, my mother stopped mentioning the storage yard and began telling people she never understood business matters, which was her way of setting down a weapon without apologizing for carrying it. The official results came in layers. First, the title company hold. Then, the correction memo. Then, the failed sale. Then, the amended Harlan lease. Then, the company vote Aaron forced after discovering Ronald had used company funds for sale preparation expenses that included Marcy's cupcakes, the tent, and 2 months of his boat dealership office rent. Aaron owned a small minority interest from Dad's estate. He had never used it before. He used it in October. At the meeting, Ronald sat across from us in the conference room of Patrice Bell's office. No balloons, no orange vest, no barbecue smoke to soften the edges. Patrice read the proposed resolution. Elaine Mercer would remain site operator. All boundary, tenant, access, and sale certifications would require site operator review. Ronald's unilateral sale authority would be suspended for 18 months. Company funds would not be used for personal debt relief. The old unit map would be digitized, attached to the operating file, and replaced on the office wall in a protective frame. Ronald objected to the last part. Of course he did. Men like Ronald can survive losing money if they can still call the evidence petty. Patrice looked at him over her glasses. The map is now part of the formal site record. Aaron voted yes. I voted yes through my operator interest. Ronald voted no. The motion carried. My brother stared at Aaron. You chose her. Aaron looked pale but steady. No. I chose the part Dad wrote down. That was the first honest thing anyone from Ronald's side had said in years. Recovery did not arrive like music. It came in tasks. I changed the gate code properly, with notices mailed, emailed, and taped to unit doors. I called every C-row tenant. I apologized for the access confusion, even though I had not caused it, because tenants do not care who starts a fire when their belongings are inside the building. I rehung Dad's photograph. I brought my old chair back behind the desk and oiled the squeaking wheel. I took the orange vest home, washed it, cut off the temporary gate attendant patch, and kept the plain vest in my trunk for snow days, when visibility mattered. I did not throw it away. Not every insult needs a shrine. Some insults can be reduced to fabric. The old map came back from the print shop in a flat black frame. Patrice insisted on a small metal label beneath it. Site boundary and access map. Original drawing by Walter Mercer. Updated and maintained by Elaine Mercer. Site operator. The day I hung it, Mrs. DeLuca brought a thermos of coffee and watched from the doorway. Looks official. It is. Looks like your father would complain about the frame. He would say I paid too much. Did you? Yes. She smiled. Good. The new map board became part of every tenant orientation. Not because tenants needed a lecture about boundaries. Because I did. Every time a new customer rented a unit, I walked them through the rows and pointed to the framed map. This yard has lines you can see and lines you cannot. I would say, we respect both. People understood that better than legal language. A young couple storing furniture during a divorce understood. A retired teacher downsizing into assisted living understood. A contractor renting B6 for tile saws understood. Mrs. DeLuca understood before I finished the sentence. Aaron started coming by on Saturdays. At first, he said it was to help with repairs. Then he admitted he wanted to learn the business. I gave him the jobs nobody photographs. Clearing leaves from drainage grates, matching payments to unit numbers, calling late tenants before sending notices, walking row C after storms, reading leases slowly. He had Ronald's last name, and none of Ronald's hunger for applause. One Saturday in November, I found him standing in front of the framed map. He was tracing the blue line with his eyes. I used to think Grandpa made this place small, he said. What do you mean? All the notes, all the rules, all the don't sell, don't promise, call first stuff. Dad made it sound like Grandpa was afraid of growth. I put a stack of envelopes on the counter. Your grandfather was afraid of carelessness. Aaron nodded. Different thing. Very. In December, Cody Harlan visited from Arizona for the first time in 9 years. He was taller than I remembered, with sun-browned skin and his grandmother's suspicious eyes. I walked him behind row C. The strip was muddy. The emergency latch leaned a little. He looked at the units, then at the ditch, then at the framed copy of the map I had carried out to show him because he asked. My grandmother liked your dad. He plowed her driveway. She said he never made her feel poor for needing it. That sentence stayed with me. Later that evening, after Cody left, I sat in the office with the lights low and the heater clicking under the desk. Outside, the keypad glowed blue in the dark. Snow had started lightly, just enough to soften the gravel without hiding it. I thought about my father. I thought about Ronald holding the master keys like a trophy. I thought about my chair beside the dumpster. I thought about the title company clock moving toward 4:10. Then I opened the January renewal file for the coming year and placed Cody's new lease on top. The paper smelled faintly of toner. My signature line was waiting. I signed slowly, not because I had won a war, because the line still needed someone careful. My mother did not apologize. People ask that sometimes when they hear a story like this. They want to know whether the person who watched it happen ever called and said the clean words, "I am sorry, I was wrong, I should have protected you." My mother called twice that winter. The first time she asked whether I had settled down. The second time she asked if Ronald could use one of the empty units for boat parts, just for a month. I said no. She made a soft, injured sound. "Elaine, he is your brother. He is also a tenant if he stores property here." "You have become hard." I looked at the framed map. "No," I said, "I have become legible." She did not understand that. It was not for her. Ronald never stored the boat parts. He sold them. He sold the boat too. By spring, he had taken a job managing sales at a dealership 2 counties over. Marcy stopped waving at me in the grocery store. Then one day she started again, a small, exhausted movement from behind the cereal aisle. I waved back. Not forgiveness. Town maintenance. There is a difference. The storage yard changed slowly. We painted the office door green because Aaron said the blue made it look like a portable toilet. He was right, which annoyed me for 2 full days. We replaced the keypad with one that did not freeze when frost got into the hinge. We added a policy that no ownership transfer, sale discussion, or tenant access change could happen without written notice posted in the office and mailed to every current tenant. Patrice called it excessive. I called it Tuesday proof. On the anniversary of the failed closing, Mrs. DeLuca brought lemon rolls again. Aaron made coffee. Cody mailed a postcard from Arizona with a desert cactus on the front and 3 words on the back. "Blue line holds." I pinned it beside the map. That afternoon, a woman about my age came in to rent a small unit. Her name was Carol Brenner. She had 2 boxes in her trunk and the stunned expression of someone whose marriage had ended before her packing had begun. "I only need it for a few months," she said. "Most people do." She looked embarrassed. "I don't know what I'm keeping yet." I handed her a clipboard. "You don't have to know today." Her eyes filled, but she turned toward the window and blinked until she could speak again. I walked her to Unit A11. The door rolled up cleanly. The concrete smelled dry. Sunlight cut across the floor in a bright rectangle. "This one is near the office," I said. "Easy access, no pressure." She looked at the empty unit. "It feels bigger than I need." "Sometimes that helps." She signed the lease. I gave her a copy, showed her the gate code, and pointed to the framed map before she left. "This tells us what belongs where," I said. She studied it for a moment. "Must be nice." "What?" "To have a map." I thought about that after she drove away. Most of my life, my family had treated me like a gate. Useful, stationary, expected to open. They forgot that a gate is not powerless. A gate decides when closed means closed. The old map did not make me brave. It made the truth hard to move. That was enough. On the last Friday of April, almost a year after Ronald put that orange vest on my arm, I stayed late to finish renewals. The yard was quiet. The kind of quiet made of settled metal, cooling gravel, and distant trucks on County Road 6. Aaron had left a note on the counter. Changed B12 latch. Mrs. D paid May. Ordered paper towels. Checked the map. I smiled at that last line. Check the map had become our office shorthand for everything Ronald had never understood. Check the boundary. Check the lease. Check the story before someone sells it. Check whether the person holding the keys has been mistaken for furniture. I locked the cash drawer. I turned off the office lamp. Before leaving, I stood in front of the framed map and touched the bottom corner of the glass, where Dad's original note sat beneath it. Do not sell. Do not pledge. Do not promise. The words were not angry. They were clean. Outside, the gate motor hummed when I entered my code. The new keypad lit beneath my fingers. The master keys were back on the board inside, but I did not need to look at them to know where they were. Some authority is loud. Mine sounded like gravel under my shoes, a lock sliding into place, and my own name printed correctly on the file. If you have ever had to protect the line someone else tried to sell, type, check the map.
Thank you for watching. If you'd like to hear more, you can follow this channel. Don't forget to hit that little bell icon to be notified when a new video is uploaded.